feel free to use that as we go. So that's just available for you as I'm speaking as well. And then at the end, I'll address those questions. Okay. So for those parents that are familiar with Google Classroom or sort of know what I mean when I'm referring to Google Classroom, just another poll. I'm wondering, have you had your child give you a tour of Google Classroom? Have you actually seen it from your child? All right, and just seeing how familiar you are as well with Google products. So a really great way to learn about Google's products and also about Google Classroom is to sit with your child and ask them, to show you what their experience is, and they'll be great educators and be able to show you what it's like for them as a student and how they use that in the classroom as well. So I do encourage you to speak to your child and ask them to show you all of the Google tools that they use at school. Okay, to give you a bit of an experience, what we're going to do is we're going to have a go using a collaborative Google Doc. So this is something that your child would be very familiar with at school. It's collaborative because we can all be in there together. We can all be editing at the same time. We can all be looking at what other people are writing in the Google Doc. So we'll have that experience together. So if you go into handouts, you can see there that there are 2 activities. So if your surname begins with A to M, I'll get you to go into the activity A to M. And if your surname begins with N to Z, then I'll get you to go into the second one. They're both the same, but just because we have a lot of people joining us, that way we can, maybe not have too many people on the same document. So just download to go into the document. So surnames beginning with A to M go into the A to M. So just click on download. And if your surname begins with N to Z, you can go into activity N to Z. You can see some people coming onto that doc. And there are some instructions there. So these are the AIS parent restaurant recommendations. So just as an activity for us to do, the instructions are that I'd like you to think about a restaurant that you would recommend to other families in Singapore. But there are a few things about using a Google Doc that we've got to be a little bit careful of. So this is a shared document. So you can see at the top, there's some little icons that are different animals. When we're at school, the students are in their school account, so we can see each student who's using the doc. So be careful not to accidentally delete someone else's work. So if you're on the same row as someone else, just move to a different row on the document. And then you're going to share the name of one great dining spot in Singapore. You're going to code it for price. So $1 sign cheap to mid-range, 3 expensive. Put in the neighborhood, and then see if you can find your restaurant on Google Maps and turn your neighborhood text into a link to the map. So there's a little bit of something a bit more advanced for you. There are some instructions at the bottom of the page for how to do that. So let's have a go. So just clicking in any of the rows, you can see someone else's icon in there. So there's someone in that row, just click into a different one. And then you can scroll to the bottom to follow those instructions on how to link it to Google Maps. All right, I can see lots of recommendations going in there. And then you might like to have a look at what other people have written, and you can actually use the add comment feature if you have any thoughts or questions about the restaurant. So if you highlight something that they have written, then you'll see the little, it's a blue plus icon that comes up on the right-hand side, and you can add a comment. And maybe you might even find some good restaurant recommendations as well while you're in the online learning session. Okay, so you can see here that Google Docs is a really great place for students to collaborate. They can all be contributing to something. They can all learn from each other. They can receive instant feedback from other students and from the teacher. This is just one way that we use Google to collaborate in the classroom, and just one feature really that we have with Google that we can use. But hopefully this gives you a bit of an experience being a student and what it's like for the students. And we've had on the A to M, someone's accidentally deleted it, which is always a challenge too. If you just click undo, or if you're not sure if that was you can undo it and then it will reappear. The great feature is you can see all the editing history, so you can always go back if that happens. All right. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of an insight into what your children are experiencing when they're collaborating on a Google Doc. But as I said, just one feature. I'm going to play through some information now that we did prepare before the session, so we'll hear from Brady as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about some other digital learning at AIS. So you can just come back to the webinar screen and we'll play through that.
Okay, so here we have the very familiar Google screen up here where everybody can search, and our students all have a special Google Education account. This special education account is controlled by our school, and it's a special program with Google where these accounts are not connected with their regular advertising and tracking. So we can control this, and it's safe for our children. So they're all signed in, and up at the top right, we can see the account, and we see this other little menu, which we call the waffle menu. And I click on here, and we can see some of the core services that we have available to us. We're going to focus mostly on Google Classroom, but we'll just quickly note that there is Gmail, Google Drive, where we can host all of our files and access them from anywhere in the world. Docs, which is like Microsoft Word, Sheets, which is much like Microsoft Excel, Slides, which is like PowerPoint, and of course, Calendar and video conferencing. But let's go ahead and take a look at Google Classroom. I have one up already here. So if I open it up here, you'll see that it's a very simple interface. And that's something that we really like about Google Classroom. Previous systems like this tended to be really quite not user-friendly and a lot of clicking around. So Google Classroom borrows a little bit more from the modern social media where you've got a stream of information coming up. And in fact, the first page that you land on is called Stream. And that just shows whatever was posted most recently at the top. So you can see that these are the most recently posted things, and we can click right in. The view for the teacher and student is almost identical. Right now we're signed in as a teacher, but we'll move over to the student so you can see how similar it is. So if we look here, we can see the most recent things and we can click in on them. Because I'm a teacher, I can see who's handed in and who has only had it assigned. I'm going to click over to classwork. And here I can see all the classwork. This classwork at the top is uncategorized, but some of it is categorized in groups here. So I'm going to click into UOI, our Unit of Inquiry. And here we can see a post here, one person handed in, and 19 assigned. We're going to come back to this because this is an important thing about if it's been handed in or not, which is important for you as a parent as you're trying to keep track of what your children are doing. So there's a whole bunch here, but if I take a look at this one here and I click in here, again, the instructions here is exactly what the students see. And I'll just take a moment just to say what's really great about it from the teacher perspective is that I could have a single document. Let's imagine this single document here. I want the students to create a script, and I have some criteria that I want them to follow. I could, in the past, I could have made photocopies of this or possibly emailed them each a document, asked them to rename the file, and asked them to email it back to me when they were finished. As you can imagine, there's lots of rooms for errors and problems, and it's impossible for the teacher to kind of check on progress as the student is working. So Google Classroom totally flips that around. With just a few clicks, it's easy for me to take this Google document and automatically create a version for every student, which I maintain access to and I can see and I can provide some comments on as they're working on it. So let's see what that looks like. In this case, we have this concept video script, and I've pushed it out to all of the students. And as the teacher, I can see their work right here. I can see all of their work. It says missing because, again, they haven't turned it in yet. So I'm going to go in and click on Josh's here. And as a teacher, I can see what he's writing, and I can edit, change what he's writing, or I might switch to suggesting mode. And here I might make a suggested edit. In this case, I'll just simply suggest that maybe that should just be a lowercase o. So instead of just rewriting it for him, it makes a suggestion which he can accept or not accept. I also might suggest that he check with Sally, who is doing something similar. Another student maybe you're suggesting that he collaborate with. So things like this make it really easy. And for the student, they don't have to email me when they're done. They don't have to do anything. They just have to click, turn it in. Let's move over to the student's experience. So I've moved over here, and at the top right, you can see we have the student and the little waffle menu. And so we can click there and we can see the different options available to us. Let's go right into Classroom. So the first screen I see are all of the classes that I am currently enrolled in. Each of them has their own stream of information and assignments. As you can see here, there is nothing in these white squares. If there were things in the white squares, those would be things that were upcoming, due soon. So that's great. But we also have a to-do list, which aggregates all the things from across the courses into one spot, and we could see it as a calendar too. So if we take a look at the to-do list, we can see that we have something here, and that's in Term 1 Health. I can click and it'll take me straight into that. I also have this. These are set as no due date. So I can click in Missing. No missing work. If I did have missing work, it would appear here. Sometimes that missing work is just work that I, as a student, may have forgotten to click the Turn In button. So this is something, if you're checking with your child why they have something marked as missing or late, maybe it's worth sitting next to them and seeing, is this something that they could click the Turned In button or just mark as done? Because you really want to keep that neat and tidy. Otherwise, they end up getting a long, long stream of things that say they're missing or are late and they're not actually. We can also see this as a calendar. You can see things coming up. So you can track how things are going on the calendar. Let's go ahead and go into one of these classes and let's see what we see. Okay, so here we have a humanities class, and as we saw before, the stream page just shows everything in order. And in this case, the teacher has not assigned any work to be due in the near future, but they do have a lot of materials posted for the students to reference. So in this case, there's some links to a Google Drive folder. Here's another link to a Quizlet activity, but these aren't traditional assignments that the student has to turn in. Here I can see class in the classwork tab. It has the assignments and resources organized by category. This teacher's done a great job with homework and then by the units, contents and oceans, types of maps, introduction. So some of these, like I mentioned, are just links and resources for the students, and others require action by the student. If I click up here, I can see view your work, and that'll just narrow it down to the things that are specifically assignments that require to be action by the student. And there's just one for this, and that is this homework assignment. We can see that it is handed in. You can also go to assigned, returned, or missing, but we won't have any for this case. But just again, just so you're really clear, on this page, if you're sitting with your child and you'd like to review where they're at, there's a lot of things in classwork. Just come to this page and then click the view your work, and that'll narrow it down to what's really coming up next for them. Okay, so let's move on. If we go back to one of these assignments, one of the things that we really like about Google Classroom is that it's easy for students to interact in a live setting in a classroom or virtually. So maybe there's something here where the student wants to have a look at this details, and then they have a comment. They have a question they'd like to make to the teacher and for everybody to see. And these comments, there's two types. One is a personal comment that's only available for between the teacher and the student, and also is more of the open dialogue for everybody to participate. So that's the basics of Google Classroom, but you might be wondering, how can you as a parent or guardian access this stuff? Can you see things on Google Classroom? How do you know what your child is working on? Well, I'm going to hand over to Erin so she can explain a little bit of that to you.
For parents with children in the secondary school, you can access their homework and their learning document through Connect. So I'll show you how to do that now. I'm just on the parent dashboard here. So I can go into resources, secondary, and then I can see all the subject areas. I'll go into English as an example. And in English, you'll be able to see your child's English class. So for Year 7 English, I can see my child's teacher here. And then I can see the learning document. So the learning document will outline the homework for each week and also just a brief description of what's happened in each lesson. So if your child is absent, they can go to the learning document to see what they've missed, or they might use it to help them with revision. Students access the learning document through their Google Classroom, but it's here for parents to access as well. I'm going to talk now about the Google Classroom Guardian summaries. So these are an email that you can sign up to receive either daily or weekly that just provide a brief summary of the activity on Google Classroom in that time. As Google Classroom is designed for students and teachers, it doesn't have the ability for parents to be added into the Google Classroom directly. So this is just a way for you to receive just a brief summary of the activity and the materials that have been posted on there over the last day or the last week. I'll show you an example of a summary. This is a weekly summary, and you can see at the top it will show any work that's missing where a student hasn't handed something in. It doesn't necessarily mean that the student hasn't completed the work. It may mean they just haven't clicked the hand in button on Google Classroom. And teachers can see works in progress, so they can still access the work even if it hasn't been handed in. Then you'll see each of the subjects or classrooms that your student is enrolled in, and a list of everything that's been posted. You can't actually see the resources attached though. Your child can access those on Google Classroom, but you can't access those just through the email summary. If it's an assignment with a due date, then it will also appear there as well. If there are any instructions with the post, then you'll be able to see those as well. So I'll show you a comparison between the email and Google Classroom. So here is the English classroom, and these are the posts from the previous week. So this is the child's view of Google Classroom, and we can see here are those same posts, same headings, but now if I click on them, your child will be able to see the attached resources. So whether it's a PDF or a slideshow there. So really the purpose of a Guardian summary is just that brief summary of what's happening in class, so that you can see the topics being covered, and perhaps it's a point of discussion where you can discuss those topics or what's being posted with your child. But as I said, the best way to really experience Google Classroom is to ask your child to show you their classrooms to see what it's like. If you would like to sign up for Guardian Summaries, you just need to contact your child's Strive teacher. They will then send you an email invitation to sign up for the summaries, where you can elect to receive them daily or weekly, and then you'll start receiving those brief summaries in your inbox. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight into Google Classroom and how you as a parent can receive a summary of what's been posted in activity on Classroom. But as I said, the best way really to see what your child's experiencing and to have a look at their work and the resources is to sit with your child and go through it with them. And I did see, yeah, there was a question in the chat about that. So in order to access your child's work, they can share their work with you. And if you ask them to share their work, as in how I shared that doc with you, they might be able to share their work with you that way. Or if you just sit with them to go through their work. So really the summary purpose is just as a discussion point and just as a brief summary of things that have been posted on Google Classroom. Okay, we have time for a Q&A session now. So you'll see that there's either in the chat or the Q&A section. If you do have any questions about Google Classroom or the Learning Doc or anything like that, then we're more than happy to help you answer those questions. So please feel free to write in the chat or in the Q&A. So if you do want to receive a Guardian summary, then please just email your child's Strive teacher if you'd like to receive those. If you haven't already asked your child for a bit of a tour of Google Classroom, or you're interested in seeing some more features of Google Docs, or there are many more Google apps that we do use at school, then I encourage you to ask your child and they can teach you a bit about how they use Google at school. All right, so if you do have a question, you can just write in the chat or in the Q&A. I can't see anything in there at the moment. Okay, this session is being recorded, so you're welcome to go back and have a look, or maybe your child can even answer some of the questions you might think of. All right, I can't see any questions in there. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us for the digital learning session. And hopefully you're able to learn a bit about Google Classroom and how we use that at school. And I encourage you to talk more about that with your child. All right, thank you everyone.